Welcome to the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel, home of the Granite security package. Like and subscribe for more content. Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the Windows 11 Granite security package video. So I want to highlight a bunch of stuff that took place behind the scenes that I did not record. So when we did the last video, we tried to use the LGPO to do the import of the registry configuration to find that it would not actually add all of the registry configuration. I'm not entirely sure why it doesn't work because, again, it does work on Windows 10. It just does not work on Windows 11. So what I've done is I've backpedaled. I grabbed the Windows XP system that I had, and I used the XP system with the XP software and the registry export that I created from the domain added system. And then I used a piece of software that I have for Windows XP that's batch written. Actually, it's a combination of batch and Visual Basic. And basically what it does is it compares the stock configured registry to the registry configuration of a group policy join machine, and then also compares that to a CSV file and an XML file that I created that have all the policy set and configurations in them. And then it does a 3 or 4-way comparison between all of those pieces of data and creates an output to match the policy set or the ADMX ADML file that would have been used to create whatever the configuration is, and then exports it into an actual registry config. And there could be 50 registry configs or 100 registry configs or whatever they are, because they're one-to-one based off of the ADMX configuration. At that point, I grabbed those ADMX configurations, filed reg files. I open each and every one of them, and then I break them out into a single registry file that we could use to import the policy configuration as a registry control. Something that I'll add is that in doing that, I also go through that. I remove things that cannot be added because of security. So basically in Windows 11, the registry itself has places that require authentication as system versus as the user. And now, while we can escalate the system as a system account and then run this and it would install everything, I don't want to do that because I don't want to add complexity to the configuration that doesn't need to be there. So the things that couldn't be applied that were required are things that have to do with like Flash Player in Internet Explorer, which I don't think we'll ever use again, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. And some of the other legacy settings that have to do with Internet Explorer. So I didn't really see a purpose in doing that. So what I have now is I have the finished product. I have a full registry configuration here for Windows 11. And if we go into here, and this bar is kind of not really true, because if I click on it, it will go back to the size of what it actually is. And if I click on here and I scroll through here, this is every single configuration control that I built into the logic for our group policy addition into the system, with the exception of from here down. And the reason why this is different is because I added these things as manual configuration changes because the group policy setting requires a domain controller for this stuff to actually work. So I modified how that registry item applied in order for it to apply to the Windows 11 machine correctly. So for instance, taskbar AL, so that's an L, not an I, so anybody that looks that up and doesn't understand why it is that the taskbar doesn't move correctly, it's because it's an L even though it looks like AI. That migrates this stuff here in the center to the left and gets rid of the widget. We have the disable search box suggestion. So in other words, this changes this search box to only search internally and not search through Bing. We have the turn off Windows Copilot. So even though Copilot will exist as an application, all the backend configuration for communication of Copilot is disabled. Enable recall AI. That also disables the AI garbage in Windows 11 to communicate back to Microsoft, to recall information back to Microsoft. Allow news and interest. We have that set to 0, which means off. So that means it'll shut off all the news article and crap that's constantly streaming in the background. system responsiveness. So now, by default, Windows 11 actually throttles system performance. So what we did is we reduced the background services, which will increase the performance of the system when you play games. Then we have wait to kill service timeout. So by default, that's 5 seconds that Microsoft Windows will wait before it attempts to reboot the system. That's too long, especially on modern hardware. So we dropped that down to 2 seconds because it doesn't need to be 5 seconds for us to wait to reboot Windows. Then we have power throttling. Yeah, believe it or not, Microsoft Windows 11 throttles your actual system usage to be more green. So that means even though your system may do 100% performance all the time with its 650 watt power supply or 500 or even 350 watt power supply, Microsoft Windows is designed to run on a 150 watt power supply setting, which means that you'll never get the performance out of it, which is why it's so laggy. So we changed that configuration too. Then we disabled the system restore and the config for the system restore. And you're going to ask, why did I do that? Because it doesn't make any difference. If you get hit with ransomware or a virus, the first thing that gets infected is the system restore. Now that doesn't turn off the ability to roll back the system, like to reinstall Windows. That's handled differently in a separate area, but the system restore, which is just the snapshot of the system, that's going to be more than likely infected before the actual machine you're using is infected. So there's absolutely no reason to run it because it just chews up services for the sake of chewing up services. Now, obviously, if you want that, easy. Just change these things to 0, change this to 0, change this back to 5,000, change this back to 20. You could change this to 1, change this to 1, change this to 0, 0, 1, and so on and so forth. So if you want to do the opposite of whatever the config is inside of this setting, you could do it. You could just make the 1 zeros and the zeros 1. The one above it, technically, this also is not part of the group policy, but that changes the right-click menus inside of Windows back to the Windows 10 right-click menus because I hate the right-click menus in Windows 11, and I think most people do. So that just sets it back to the old way. Now, I did look to see if we could use the classic start menu configuration, and so far I haven't found a way to do that. Now, you could run things like OpenShell. I don't really like OpenShell because it removes my ability to use the right click. I have to use like Shift Control left click to get to the right click menu. And again, I like organization, so that's not going to work for me. However, since the classic configuration did exist in version 20H2 of Windows 11, I have been looking into possibly grabbing the config files out of the System32 folder and then migrating them as part of the package over to this version of 24H2 so we could get the classic Windows menu back from Windows 10 in our Windows 11 configuration. So that might be something that'll be added into like part 2 of the Granite security package, but I fully intend to release part 1 of the Granite security package here within the next couple days. There's no reason to really wait for it because all it is a registry configuration. Now with that said, I would like to package this as an MSI. So in this video, let's go through a configuration using the advanced installer, the freeware version, to see if it's possible for us to create a simple MSI installer for our configuration. Now, this software is awesome if it works. The problem with this software that I've run into in the past is that it doesn't work right. So I'm going to try it. We're going to see what happens. The issue that I've had in the past is obviously that when I import my registry configuration, that it doesn't import the full registry configuration. It seems to miss things. Now, I don't know if there's something wrong with the way it functions as far as the import on the config or if I'm missing something, which is possible. But I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think I would pay for it knowing that even in the freeware version, it's buggy enough that it doesn't import even the simplest things like a registry config. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually name it. So we're going to name this thing the Windows 11 Granite Security Package. We're going to leave this as version 1.0, although maybe we should just make it 0.0.1 because it's the first release. Do GenericTechSupport. Maybe we'll do our link here as HTTPS whack whack. We'll do YouTube. At GenericTechSupport. We'll leave this all alone. We're going to disable the removal because you really can't remove this once it's part of it. So as stated before, when you do registry modifications or you do configurations inside of your group policy settings, you should really follow the stance of legacy policy configuration, which means that there's not configured, there's enabled, and there's disabled, right? Not configured is out of the box. That's whatever the default value is. Enabled changes a value to 1 or 0 inside your registry. And disabled does the opposite of the 1 and 0 to 0 and 1. When you go from enabled to not configured, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go from 1, 0 back to 0, 1. So as a result, even though you not configure something, doesn't mean that it's going to default back to actually not configured. So if you do enable, you have to do disable. If you do disable, you have to do enable. Same thing happens in the registry. If you have a 0, you have to change it to a 1, and if you have a 1, you have to change it to the 0. You have to do the reverse of whatever the configuration is in order to revert the changes that you made. Okay, so that's the product details. We don't need files and folders, but this is a place that you could go. Let's keep the existing. This is a place that you could go if you wanted to for, the sake of adding additional files to your program files directory. So in other words, if you wanted to create an MSI file that literally just drops the files into a structure or directory, and then you want to execute that with a batch script on your domain, you could do so with this. It'll just create the MSI. You can do the MSI / or MSI exec space / I, and then do your MSI installer, and that will extract the files. If you buy the professional version, you could include the batch script into the actual software, which will give you the ability to execute it. The older version of the software, which I think is 14.3, that will run on Windows XP. This is version 22. This will not run on Windows XP. We can see it up here, 22.6. This won't run on XP, so you can't create an XP package with this. You'd have to use the 14.3, which is what I wanted to do for the Granite XP package, but again, I'm not going to buy software on my own dime, so especially for the sake of this project, because it's not necessary for me to do so. So eventually, either maybe I could get a freeware copy, maybe this company, the advanced installer, will give me a free 90-day key or something that I can use just to create the package for the sake of concept, since I'm doing them basically a solid here and creating them a video on how this stuff works. But I doubt it. So let's continue on. We go into the registry. This is where we want to actually go to do our import. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on target computer, and up on the top here I'm going to see import reg. I'm going to choose file. And now we're going to whack to my tools directory on my actual C drive. And there's our full registry config. So we're going to choose open. And we're going to see that it imports the configuration. And we're going to see a variety of places that it imports configuration. Now the issue is that I have a feeling, even though this is all showing that it's imported, that it's missing data that exists inside of the registry key that doesn't exist in here, because it's probably lacking the actual key locations, and it's not smart enough to create the keys. They're customized inside of that actual file. That's my guess, because I ran into this issue in the older version of the software when I was doing the stuff with the XP, which required me to create a batch file with the regadd commands in order to circumvent the actual issue. The problem is obviously, in order to use the regadd, you have to purchase the software. I have a feeling they know this, and that's why you can't do it with the freeware version, because they want you to buy the paid version. That's my guess. So again, I doubt that they'll send me a license, because basically I'm airing out their dirty laundry here as far as their configuration. And if it's not that, then it's a bug that's existed since Windows XP all the way to this current version. Again, presumably, if this doesn't work correctly, which my guess is that it won't work correctly. Okay, so let's look at the next step here. So we're going to continue on down the path here. Do we want to install perimeters? This is where it's going to ask us what we want to do. We're going to see here, perform a reboot if required without showing. It says here, prompt for a reboot when it's done. We're not going to do that. We're going to force a reboot after the install. We're going to do a per machine. If the user fails, is not an administrator. We could do per user only, where with administrator rights is required, or per user only, or we could do per machine only, fails, or per machine if user is administrator, per user otherwise. You can make all the installation type behavior different. So I just assumed to use per machine, which could be my issue with my registry. So we may have to reconfigure this in here and see if it makes any difference. You could choose the run as administrator, but if you do that, you're going to see right here, it's going to tell you that you have to upgrade the license to the paid version in order to use run as administrator. The thing is if you run an MSI package that requires administrator access, I believe it's on the second click, it's going to force during the installation process, it's going to force the use of UAC anyway in order to do the installs. So it doesn't really make any difference whatsoever whether or not you do run as administrator here. Everything else, I'm just going to leave as is. I mean, I could add the don't save system restore points for installation because, quite frankly, it doesn't make any difference, right? Because we're going to wipe those system restore points with the configuration after the reboot anyway, so what's the difference? We could do perform only file costing, skip other costs. We could reduce the frequency of the process messages, but again, because this is just a registry add, it doesn't make any difference what this other stuff is. We could go into builds now. We could look at the build configuration. We're going to see that it's going to add all the registry stuff into cab files and kind of clean it up, which is something that we do want to have done. We're going to want to choose an output folder in here. This is going to be where we're going to output the actual configuration. So I'm actually going to go in here. I'm going to create a folder called package. We'll go in there and we'll hit select folder. We're going to need to name the MSI. So we're going to name it Windows. Yeah, let's do Windows 11 Granite Security Package. Okay, so that'll create the MSI file. Great. Everything else in here we could leave as is. And we're going to go down here into launch conditions. Now, you could go into analytics if you really wanted to. And analytics will give you the ability to create metrics on how this outputs, so you can create logging. We don't need to do that. Now, something that's really stupid is if I uncheck the 64 and then I uncheck the 32, it's going to tell me I need to have one variable. So if I say have Windows 32 and I know I can't install it on a Windows 32 package and I uncheck that, and then I just want to check Windows 11, so I want to uncheck this to do it, it won't let me do that, which is really dumb. So we have to check that, then uncheck that, then check Windows 11, then uncheck that in order for it to allow us to install it on just Windows 11. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to require like physical memory. So we could set memory limitations, screen resolution, minimum color quality, the minimum installer version. So in other words, if I want to choose like 24H2 and I want to only choose 24H2, I can make the installer version forced to use the 22H2 or 24H2 or whatever it is for the installer version. I don't really need to do that. We could see here that we could prevent running on ARM devices. I don't know if this will work on ARM. We could try it. What the heck? Prevent running in virtual machines. I don't know why I would do that. Run only on Windows Azure virtual machines. I don't know why I would do that. Run if an active internet connection is found. Run only if the antivirus product is found. And then run only if the current user is an admin account, which I do want to check that because you need to be an admin in order to escalate the UAC control and in order to install the actual config of the registry into the machine. Okay, so at this point, we have our configuration here done. The next place we're going to go is actually into dialogues, but I'm going to click on Merge Modules so you can see what that is, which, again, you could add a module, add from a repository, whatever you want to do there. Dialogues is where we're going next. Once you're in dialogues, on the right-hand side, we're going to see the different dialogues that you're going to get during the installation process. So the one thing I'm going to do, at least in my installation process, if we look through this whole thing here, is I'm going to delete the folder download configuration. And the reason why is because it's pointless. We're not downloading anything. Why would we download it? We're going to literally run it from the MSI. It's going to execute the registry file. It's going to import the registry configuration. And at that point, we're done. There's no reason to continue on. So we're going to see the progress. We're going to do the exit dialog, which will give me the finish. And if we look down here, just expand this a little bit here so you can see it a little better, is we could show the README options. We could launch the application at the end of the installation. So if I click on this, we could choose an executable to run at the end of the installation. So for instance, if we wanted to run this and then we said, oh, we also want to execute OpenShell at the end of it so it changes the start menu to the classic start menu, we could click that, add the OpenShell configuration package to this, and then at that point, the system would install or prompt to install OpenShell at the end of the configuration so you get the classic start menu back. But I don't want to do that yet because I'm still curious whether or not I could grab the 20 and 21H2 package from Windows 11 classic start menu and import that into the 24H2 version in order for us to use the classic start menu on the for Windows 10 in Windows 11 for 24H2. So again, look at that. Look for that at like 0.03 1.2 version of the Granite security package installer for Windows 11. So at this point, there's really nothing in the dialog that I have to change. So let's take a look at environment. In here, we could create new variables. And then custom, which we could go into properties, and we can add customizations. Now, the customizations, as soon as I would go to add anything like customizations, is going to automatically tell me I can no longer use this as freeware, and I have to purchase a license. So it's pointless, right? We have no reason to do that. So we're going to go back to product details. We're going to see what we have. I just want to make sure we're spelled correctly. GenericTechSupport, we're spelled correctly. Everything else looks good. We can add a license key if we wanted to. If not, the system will auto-generate a license key for it. So at this point, what do we want to do? We want to build. So we're going to click on the little drop down. We're going to choose build. And it's going to tell me it's a project file for the Granite security project, or package rather. We're going to put it in the package location. We're going to hit save. And there it is. It built the package. We don't see any errors. Oh, actually, I am. Here we go. Detecting MSI incompatible resource. I don't know why that is. Creating MSI database, writing the values, validating the MSI, and then it tells me that it finished the build successfully. So whatever this was, it probably skipped it, or it's not a scenario or necessary. In here, we could go into run, references, find results, notifications, things of that nature. But here's the output. So now if we jump back over and we go into package, there is our MSI package. And if I go to show, file name extensions, there's the MSI. So let's close all this out and let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so closing the window. Great, we have the package. There's our package. I'm going to double click on this. There we go. Welcome to the Windows 11 Granite Security Package Setup Wizard. So we're going to click on Next. We're going to choose Install, which there's the UAC prompt that it's going to do, which keep in mind, again, the paid version requires run as administrator, but you could just do this. So we're going to choose Yes. And we're going to choose Finish. Now, you will see that we did get the Start menu shift to the left-hand side, so some of it worked at least. I'm going to choose Yes. We're going to do a reboot. When the system comes back up, we'll see if it actually applied everything. Okay, so we're starting to come back up now. Nope, didn't work. So the reason why I could tell it didn't work is because we didn't get a splash screen for our Welcome to the Granite security package for Windows 11. We have some of the configuration, but not all of the configuration. So something didn't apply. And again, I'm guessing it's because it can't do a reg add or a configuration to add the registry keys into the setup in the advanced installer. It probably knows that you can't do that, or they have a limitation in the software baked in to force you to have to purchase it. So it's, again, it's not that great if I have to purchase it in order to use a very simple function like regadd through a command line in the actual system. Because if I add the registry key itself manually, I'm not going to get this. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. We'll say, let's reboot it one more time and see if it makes any difference. Okay, so we just rebooted. Let's see what happens here. Nope, definitely didn't work. So I'm going to show you what it's supposed to do by just running the registry key. We'll have to reset this machine after that point and re-attempt it again to see if maybe if we change. Actually, before we do that, let's make the changes inside of the actual advanced installer to change the logic of how it installs, maybe as the per user versus the per machine, to see if that makes any difference. Okay, so I just opened this thing back up. So we're back in here. We can see the config. We can go back down into the install parameters, and we're going to go into the installation type. And let's do per machine if user is administrator. Let's try that and see if it makes any difference. And now let's do a... I don't know if I should just do another build or if I should do a rebuild. Let's find out. Let's do a rebuild. Okay, so we have that file again in there. All right, so now at this point, I'm going to, I guess, close this. And let's attempt running it again. I'm going to actually create a shortcut of the tools directory or rather the package directory on my desktop. So let's create a shortcut here so we don't have to keep going through the menu system to get there. And let's run this again. So that's the right time. So this should be good. Oh, all right. So it's not going to let me do that because it only allows a single install of the package. So we're going to have to fix that too. Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to reset the machine in order to fix that because of the way this actual application works. So let's put the installer in the package. Let's put the config file in the package. Let's take a backup of the package and we'll reset this machine real quick. Okay, so we took or rather we reverted back to the snapshot. So if you look around, you can see that we don't have anything installed anymore. I'm just gonna go back into the package. We'll do the install real quick of the actual software. So we'll run through this. Maybe, Bueller, there it goes. And I'll tell you, this thing's really slow before we actually apply the Granite security package to it, which makes a huge difference in performance. I mean, it's tremendous. It's almost night and day, the configuration change as far as performance is concerned in Windows 11. Now, I'm not saying on paper it looks any different because we really do reduce utilization of memory by about 25 to 30%. And we reduce the CPU utilization by about 25 to 30%. But it makes the OS feel so much snappier, where when you click on things, they actually open. They don't like lag. And it runs fast on 2 cores with 4 gigs of memory. So, I mean, it does make a huge difference from a performance standpoint once you get the Granite security package installed on it. But it is boat anchor slow before you get that. Okay, so we have it now reloaded. I'm going to uncheck the disable remove and see if that makes any difference. So we can see register the product with Windows installer. I don't think I need to do that either. Yeah, I'm going to continue because so basically what that says is that I can't do an uninstall through the add remove programs, but you're not going to be able to do an uninstall anyway because there's no script configuration or revision written into the registry file to revert every single change. I mean, I could add a removal tool if we needed to in the future, but right now I have absolutely no desire to do that. I might actually put in here somewhere, I don't know, maybe we should add this as the name and just put it as beta and change that just so that way people know that this is not a full release, because again, we're gonna probably build upon this configuration package to add more functions to it. Either there are registry modifications, or if there's issues with it after you get it installed, you know, shoot me over something in the email, and you know, I'll do my best to write a reversion for it or a fix for it, and we'll continue on the package through the beta configuration. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't know what it'll do if you have a full-blown machine. Like I would tell you right away, like just like the Granite XP configuration, don't run this unless it's a clean machine, a clean build, because you know it may cause functionality issues. Because again, it is a security package configuration. It's based on the STIG values, the NIST controls, and then some customized logic in them just to lock down the system to get our way around the telemetry garbage and everything else that reports back to everybody, to Big Brother. Because even though you think that the only thing watching you in Windows 11 is Windows 11 and Microsoft, it's not. So the Google Chrome application and the Mozilla Firefox application in Windows is much different than it is in Linux. The one in Windows actually integrates with the telemetry data, and it reports data back to both Mozilla as well as Google. So even though you disable it in the actual Windows operating system, if you don't also disable the corresponding configuration in both Mozilla as well as Chrome, then they report back to those likewise owners as well, those application developers as well as everything else in Windows. That's that recall AI garbage that we talked about earlier that integrates with all the services for all the applications to send information about the usage, the statistics, and everything else back to Big Brother. It actually gets so bad in Windows 11 that your local IP address, MAC address, and then the actual gateway MAC address also gets reported back to these manufacturers. So they know your entire threshold, your entire infrastructure. They could see the entire thing, the whole like Visio diagram output of your whole network with every hop through the process is reported back to all of these different companies through Windows 11. So the Granite package disables all that stuff. But obviously, if you disable it, you're going to have adverse effects when it comes to things like functionality. So I would tell you to check it out first, and don't plan on it being like the end-all be-all fix for all the issues, because there's still additional issues that we'll have to work through, and I'm sure that we'll run into bugs with the actual package, but it does disable a lot of that garbage. So it really should help you long-term with security on your local Windows 11 system. Okay, so let's continue on through here, right? So we know that the registry values were added. Presumably all the registry values were added correctly. Who knows? We're going to have to go into the install perimeter here. We have the per machine, user, administrator, likewise, whatever. We have that done. We have the don't save. So everything else looks like it copied over. So let's do a rebuild. And there we go. We rebuilt the location. It looks like the build is successful. So now if I go into tools and we take a look, we should see the timestamp for the MSI, which we do. So that looks correct. So at this point, we should be able to run this on this machine. So let's close all the windows and let's run it and see what's changed. All right, so the big test here, obviously, all right, there we go. We get the beta package. So we see beta up here. So the big test here, obviously, is after we do the install and after it reboots, when it comes back up, do we get the splash screen? Because if we don't get the splash screen, then obviously this still isn't working correctly, and we'll have to dig back into it to see if we could fix it. So let's hit finish. It's going to require a reboot. We're going to say yes. Okay, so the system is now coming back up. Hopefully, with any luck, we'll get a splash screen. Nope, we sure as heck don't. So that still didn't work. So, I mean, we could continue on checking every single box in there to see if it makes any difference. And perhaps that is something that I'll do here, just so we could take a look. But so far, only registry merging, that actual registry configuration, works. Using this advanced installer doesn't seem to work correctly, which is unfortunately the case, because it really is a good application. And if they could fix a bug that looks like it's now existed since Windows XP, which is a long, I mean, you got to figure that's 24 years. So there's been a bug for 24 years they haven't fixed. If there's a bug in an application for 24 years, it's not a bug. It's there by design so they can get you to purchase the application. But like most things, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. So let's go back in this thing. Let's open our project. Let's change the install parameters again to per user with administrative rights required. So we can see the install type's been changed. Let's rebuild the package. Great, let's see if it worked. Now if it didn't work, we'll just revert the machine back to before I ran the actual script or the application, and we'll see if that, makes any difference. Now you'll notice that I have to still go through the menu system because I forgot to save the stupid shortcut on the desktop. But anyway, let's take a look at the MSI package here, and let's see if we could rerun it. Yep, we sure can now. So that's at least, we've already at least gotten a step further than we had before. So let's click on next and install, and yes. Great, we'll do finish. Let's do a reboot and see if that splash screen shows up. Nope, still didn't show up. So it still didn't apply the entire package. So that's unfortunate because, again, I really did want to use this application because I really did see a benefit in using it, but it clearly doesn't work right. I mean, I don't even know if we could just do a comparison. Like if we go back in here and do a file open to the previous package, so there we go. If we go back into the registry and let's expand some of this stuff. So we know specifically that we're not getting the splash screen. So if I go in here and into our C drive and tools and package and right click on this thing and do open with Notepad. God, I hate Notepad in Windows 11. It's really terrible. Like I just can't get over how bad it is in comparison to things, so like Notepads existed pretty much the same from Windows 10 all the way back to NT4. And it was, it's one of those things that if it ain't broke, don't fix it scenarios where it just worked really well. There was absolutely no reason to ever change it. Maybe increase the buffer so you can open larger files would have been helpful. But this thing's crap. It's just so clunky and awful. So maybe we'll figure out how to add the old version back into the system. Obviously, you could use Notepad++. That works too. But yeah, it's crazy to me that it just what a mess. All right, let's see if we could find the notification. So we'll do a Control F. We'll find Granite. Okay, so there's the Granite security warning, which is under local machine. So we need to find this particular path right here. So HQ local machine software, Microsoft Windows current version policy system. So software, okay, software, but I got nothing. So it didn't add anything in the software key. So why didn't it add anything in the software key? Let's see if we do another import maybe. File, import, great, registry configuration, good. Still didn't add anything. I think we actually have more this time than we did before, but still didn't add anything. Maybe there's a buffer limit on this thing. Maybe if I take this config and I break it out into like 3 different registry keys, maybe that'll help. We could give that a try and see if that makes the difference. But so far, we're missing configuration in here. Again, so we're software Microsoft. Software. Okay, so there's Microsoft. Maybe this was here before. I didn't see it, if that's the case. Microsoft, Windows. I don't see Windows. So it definitely is missing stuff, which tells me that it's not fully importing it maybe, or something's funky here. But let's maybe try multiple files. Maybe this is just too big for this advanced application to install, like the advanced installer to actually import. So let's break this out into sections and then try it again. Okay, so what I did is I created a variety of registry keys with no real rhyme or reason as to why one ends at one point and one begins at the other. But I tried to make them equal about the same amount of lines per registry key. So let's see how I did. So if we go to import file, they're roughly about the same file size, I guess. So we're going to go in here and we're going to arrange this by file. Let's do it this way. All right, so we have reg part 1. Let's open this. That's interesting. So we can't import a registry file that I created in Windows 11 because it thinks it's Windows 2000. So that's on par for the configuration of this application so far. Seems to be just about as buggy as Windows 11 is. Let's see if we go into edit here. Do we have the... Yeah, so we have the versioning at the top there. And that was created on this machine, which is Windows 11. So let's try this again. Let's do import a file. Let's just do part reg and see what happens. Okay, so that did work. All right, so it looks like maybe I just missed the configuration details at the top. So if we go back in here and we do edit, we're going to have to grab this top line here and add this to the other keys for whatever reason. That seems to be the deciding difference. So let's do that for these rest of these registry keys. And then we'll try to import more of the data because it did add the Internet Explorer option under Microsoft. So it must actually be a buffer limit that's built into the application as far as importing is concerned. Now, it would be great if they would tell you that, but they don't. So I guess this is what we're doing now. So give me a second here. Let me add these to the rest of these files in here, and then we'll attempt to install or add the rest of the stuff in here and create this package. Okay, so I made all the changes. Let's go in here now and do this again. So I think we already did part. Unfortunately, this isn't, well, I hate to do this because it's kind of annoying, but I'm just going to do it. So 1, no, 2, this is my own fault, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. I'll be right back. Okay, so let's do this now as it sits. We'll go into the registry, import file. We're going to choose, we already did one. We'll do two. Hit open. Great. Haven't seen any changes, so that must have been part of the beginning. We'll do import file. We'll choose 3 and open. Import file. Go 4, open. Haven't seen any changes yet. Have you guys seen any changes yet? I haven't seen anything yet. 5, open. 6. 7. I am seeing them down here. Seeing additional things added. File. 8. Did get a big change up here. A bunch of stuff added to the system. So it definitely is a buffer limitation on the size of the registry file. You can import into the actual advanced installer, which is both good and bad, right? Because now at least I could fix that. I could work around that issue. But at the same time, you know, we're not talking a tremendous file, right? We're talking 364 kilobytes. You can't install 364 kilobytes into an application on Windows 11 in 2025. Somebody needs to fix that. I mean, you know, that's what, are we running 16-bit mode now? I mean, I don't even think that's supported anymore. Anyway, let's rebuild this application here, or rebuild this. And let's attempt to do the install. And let's see if now we have all of our configuration. So that's what took quite a bit more time to actually run. So that's a little more reassuring that this is going to work. But let's give it a shot. Okay, so we'll just double check. There's the installer, 940, 941, so right around the same time. Let's double click on this thing. Great. Next. Install. Yes. Okay, finish. Yes. Okay, so now we're coming back up. Any luck, we're not going to get all the way to the login screen. Nope, still didn't work. Still missing data. So let's see what this looks like in our advanced installer. Let's go into the simple project again. Actually, we should probably just go in here and grab this. Loading components, great. Let's go into our registry. Great. So now let's take a look at our configuration for our Granite package. Package. Let's right click on this thing again and do edit. Got it. Just don't save. Oh, hold on a second here. Because if I didn't save and that was number 8 and I go in here and I do edit, yeah, it has the registry editor at the top, so it's not the issue. Okay, so let's go back in here and let's do a search. Let's do Control F. Let's look for Granite. Great, so we're going to look specifically again for this location. So we have HKey local machine, right? So we have software. We have Microsoft. Yeah, I have no Windows. So why don't I have a Windows? So if I go into software Microsoft, I mean, why is this down here and not added into the correct location? So I don't know what's going on or why this is like this, but it's definitely not right. It's adding additional things in the software and system configuration, but not adding them under the location of the registry, the actual target. I have absolutely no idea why that would do that. And why it would do HK_LM without the HKey. Well, is there something funky in the... Oh, it's still a HKey local machine. There's no associated GUID to it, so it's not like it's forcing the GUID association. I don't actually have any idea why this is doing this. The only thing I think of is that there's probably a bug. Obviously, this has to be fixed. We'll just save that. But there's probably a bug in the software because, again, it just doesn't... Why would it... I mean, even this, like, so this is system current control set. So why isn't it under... I mean... So why do I have this system in addition to the other... So something's funky here. I'm going to see if I can manually move this stuff into the correct locations and see if that makes any difference. But I don't understand why the software is moving this stuff when the logic doesn't even exist in the actual config file itself. So something is definitely borked in the advanced installer. But then, like I said, 14.3 doesn't work right either on Windows XP. That you have to use scripting to do it, which requires a professional license, which tells me right off the bat that there's clearly something wrong with the application, but either they don't know how to fix it or they don't want to fix it. Because again, 24 years, they know the issue exists, they don't want to fix it, they want you to purchase the software. They're not going to give it to you for free. They want you to purchase software and have to jump through hoops to actually get it to work right. Okay, guys, so I did a little homework, a little Googling, and looked, and apparently this is a known issue, and there really is no fix. It's because of a COM issue that has to do with the advanced installer and how the advanced installer actually handles the packages. So at this point, the advanced installer, I would say, is pointless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have a backup of my actual registry configuration with the lowercase I fixed inside of the splash screen. And then at that point, I'm going to reset this machine again, and I'm going to have to figure out alternative packaging methods. But before I do that, I want to show you how this actually works. So we're going to reset this machine, revert it back to the default. And once it's reverted, we're going to actually just run the package installer as the .reg file. So you could see all the customizations and configurations that went into the Granite 11 package. And then once I figure out what software I could use to actually package this as an MSI, I'll release this immediately. There's really no reason to hold back. And then, you know, you guys can mess around with it and see how it works. And if you don't like it, you have issues, whatever it is, hit me up on the channel first, obviously underneath the video. And if not, shoot me over an email. I usually get the channel comments first before I get to the email. That's typically how it works. I don't have the email associated to a phone or anything like that. It's just physically in a Microsoft Outlook on a machine that's virtual that's not always running. So I don't always reply to those things immediately, but I do reply to them if there's things that I can reply to. Some people ask me questions about things that I just don't know. I mean, like, if you're going to ask me how I could proprietarily modify the kernel of a Unix-based system, I don't know, man. I have no idea. It depends on what it is and where it is and how it is and who it is and what's set up and what it's set to do. And I also don't want to give you wrong information, because if I do and you screw something up, I'm sure you'll blame me. So I don't really know the answer to those things. Sometimes I also get a lot of emails about people interested in me showcasing their software. Listen, if it's software that really works and it's something that's good and something that could be used, I reply to those emails. But there's also companies that have reached out that, I mean, you know, no offense, you have very nice software, I'm sure it works great, but you could do it for free through Windows. And my idea, or my channel, is dedicated to showing techs and engineers how to do this manually. I don't really want to use software for everything. Software is helpful for some things, like this, but not for everything. I mean, worst case scenario, I could always just use Wix and write out the script to actually package this thing. I want to see if I could skip that, do it an easier way. So maybe that's the next video, is to review some of these application compiler software, these freeware applications, and see specifically what they do and what they don't do and how they work. But so far, based off of what I could see for advanced installer, if it doesn't work in the free version, I sure as heck am not going to pay for it. So let's see what happens here. We're going to try something different. We'll try a different piece of software. But before we do that, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's reset this machine. Let's run this actual registry key so you can actually see this package in action, and then we'll end the video. Okay, guys, so we are reverted. As you can see, the start menu's back in the middle. We have the widgets back. We don't have any configuration customizations on this machine at all. It is how it is out of the box. It's still got the annoying menu. We're going to right-click on this. We're going to do Open. We're going to say Yes, and Yes, and OK. Okay, so now we have the package merged. Just like that. Just that easy, right? So now at this point, I could go... Well, I should probably go back in there real quick. We'll go back into Tools. and we'll right-click on something. We still have the ridiculously annoying menu. Let's reboot the system. When the system comes back up, we'll kick this back in. Okay, so we are coming back up now, as you can see. And there we go. We got our Granite security warning, which means that this package actually applied. So we'll click on OK, which is going to bring us into our logon. Now, obviously, you could create a password if you want or not. It's up to you, but I didn't add that logic into here that requires you to create a local password. However, if you do create a local password, it has to be compliant, so keep that in mind. So we can click on Start. We have our Start menu. We have our file and folder structure. We could go in here. We could go to the C drive. We could right-click on stuff. We could go to Properties. But you'll notice now that we have the classic right-click menu system back. You'll also notice that it is snappier. So if I go into these settings and I look, go into Performance, and we could drop this down into Logical Processors, and we could see that this particular image is running 2 gigs of memory. It's running 8 gigs, or rather, it has 8 gigs of memory. 2 gigs of it is actually used. We're running about 3 to 4% on a dual core configuration. So we only have 2 cores configured for this actual image. And it's snappy. Now, again, like I said, on paper, it doesn't really look much different than what we're going to get. Some of the other things that I will note is that, like Microsoft Edge, I got rid of the stupid splash screen that pops the first time you open Edge. So now it'll automatically just open Edge. And then as far as the Edge configuration is concerned, it's locked down so that way it doesn't share everything that you do with Microsoft. So you could actually use it now as a browser if you really wanted to. Copilot, it still exists here on the taskbar, and you can unpin it. It still exists as an installed application, but it's not doing anything. OneDrive is configured as an application that may install, but it doesn't have permission to run, so saving everything you do automatically to OneDrive isn't the default location. The default location is your local computer. The Microsoft Store, yes, you could put your password in, your username in, no problem. It's not there by default. It's not going to bark. It's not going to annoy you with that. You're not going to get 15 million pop-ups on here because all the pop-ups and the notifications, with the exception of the reboots and the antivirus alerts, everything else is turned off. The camera is not turned on to spy on you because, believe it or not, in the configuration out of the box on Windows 11, they can record audio and video without you knowing. That's part of the fine print that you signed off on when you installed Windows 11. Windows 11 can turn on the camera whenever it wants and watch you. It can turn on audio whenever it wants and listen to you. And then they could use that audio and video information for whatever purpose they decide to do, because in the fine print, it doesn't say it's for marketing purposes. It says that they are allowed to turn on the analytic data to actually record you. They can actually record your face too for the purpose of creating artificial intelligence for commercials in Microsoft's world, which only God knows what that actually means. So they're actually recording your face, your facial structure, through the actual configuration by default. That's turned on by default, not off. It's not something that you have to opt into, you have to opt out of it. So we have that disabled now in here as well, because I don't know about you, but I don't want my face randomly popping up on AI somewhere. Which leads me to another thing. Guys, if you're out there right now and you're looking for jobs, you got to be really careful, because a lot of these companies are now using AI to actually do their first part interviews. They require a video. They use that video data and the AI integration software to scan your face for biometric type of face scans. Once they do the face scan, they could use that face scan to compare analytic data. Now, if you unlock your cell phone with your face, that data is actually recorded. And when you do a background check, a digital background check, that thumbprint exists of your actual face. So they know where you've been. They know what you've been up to. They know where you've gone. They know all of that information based on your face unlock feature on your phone. And they could use that in comparison with the face unlock or facial information that you provide to them through their AI integration or interview process to figure out specifically what you do. So when they do an actual background check, if it's digital based, they know that you were at this Walmart at this time, that you know that you maybe used your Apple payment plan to pay the thing. So you unlock the phone, then you use the Apple Pay. They know not only that, but they know what you bought. So you got to be real careful with the information you share to these hiring people, because they're nuts. They're crazy. I would never share that stuff. Also now with the third-party HR companies, make sure before you do a background check, check the background check company to make sure it's a legit company. Because sometimes these third-party HR companies, they don't care, man. They're going to share your data with companies that have been breached. I mean, if you look up like GHRR right now, GHRR is a company that was breached for 3.34 million records. Social security numbers, HIPAA data, everything else was released to the public through hackers that gained access to it. But they still haven't fixed their infrastructure. There's still no SSL certificate for half their infrastructure. So you got to watch this. You got to really watch. If you're looking for a job right now, make sure you do not give information that's going to require you to lock out things like your social security information, lock out, put a freeze on your credit, because that'll really affect finding another job with a company that isn't a bunch of scumbags. So it's super important that you do that. So these are things that I just want to share with you because this all aligns with Microsoft Windows 11. Windows 11, it does not opt you out of everything by default. It opts you in and you have to opt out. And if you don't spend the time going through the operating system, you're not doing yourself any good or any favors. I would at that point argue, and I've argued multiple times in the past, and I know people fight back on it, that, oh, it's a pain in the neck. I got to be honest with you, I would rather have it not work, like the ability to install Microsoft Office, than to have my face associated with my phone unlock, my data, and maybe what I bought at CVS at 10 o'clock at night. It's ridiculous. It really is. And since there's no security anymore, that we don't have any privacy of any kind, you have to create your own privacy. That's something that's very important, is to create your own layer or level of privacy. So I'm going to tell you right now that if you're running Windows 11, you don't have that, at least out of the box. You can do configurations to lock it down, and at that point, take a snapshot of that system and save it somewhere because you're going to want to use it in the future. As far as Windows 10 is concerned, Windows 10 has the same problem if you're running 22H2. If you go back to like 22H1 or 21H2, then you're okay because it predates the AI integration garbage. But if you're running 22H2 on Windows 10, you have the same problem. It's not just Windows 11. I don't want you to think it's just Windows 11. And actually, believe it or not, this started to become an issue in Windows 8.1. So really the entire time of Windows 10, if you didn't have the configuration set on Windows 10 to lock down Windows 10 and protect your privacy, there was a bunch of stuff built into Windows 10 that was recording things that you do. Windows 11, same thing, but worse. Windows 8.1 was really the introduction, and even before that, if we really think about it, Windows XP even had some introduction into data identity type of software, identity finding software, built into Windows XP Service Pack 3 that most people just don't know exist. And it does. It's just gotten worse. It's just gotten far worse, especially now with AI and the integrations and the camera stuff and the biometrics and everything else. You don't want to donate your information to these companies because these companies don't care. I mean, Microsoft had that breach where they leaked data and they still haven't reported specifically what that data leak looked like, but it was enough for them to delete or remove the server certificates for 2019 16 12R2 12 servers. So clearly the token that they used to create the encryption key was stolen. So, what else that token was associated to, we'll never know. But if you're going to trust a company that doesn't tell the information and disclose what's actually been breached, you're nuts. I give you all the hope and wish from the world that it works out for you, but I don't think it will in the long run. So at any rate, let's end this video. Granite 11, obviously it's coming. We got to figure out a packaging process. Next video will probably be about how to package, what works, what doesn't. So look for that in the next series. And I really do appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for watching the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Find the content of this video at https://generictechsupport.com/#channel.